Did you know that one of these charges comes with a death penalty outcome if the government was to seek it? That's right. This charge surrounding conspiracy against rights, defrauding people of their ability to vote. One of the punishments to that charge is the death penalty. Nobody's talking about this, but I've said for a long time, I don't even say it joking, they want President Trump dead. They'd be happy with him 6 feet under, and it is sad for me to say that, but it is absolutely true. Will they seek the death penalty? No, there's no way they would get away with that, but it does come with the death penalty to show you just how far these people would go. And then the mainstream media compares this case to Osama bin Laden. Listen to this.
When I first learned about the indictment, I had a long conversation with a friend of mine, Ryan Riley, and I told him how proud I felt to be an American at that moment, much in the way that I did when I learned that our military had killed Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was a terrorist who committed a horrific act against American people and against our republic. And I believe that Donald Trump is a terrorist who committed horrific acts against the American people.
How dare you compare Donald Trump to the death of Osama bin Laden, call him a terrorist? That, of course, is that radical Capitol Police officer who's gone on the warpath against President Trump. Quite frankly, in my opinion, he is a disgrace to the badge and anyone who wears a flag on their shoulder. Why? Because he pushes all of these lies. So while that case is front and center, it becomes more and more clear to me every day that Joe Biden is corrupt, that the Biden crime family is real, that Hunter Biden orchestrated a pay-to-play scheme to enrich his entire family. There is another story that needs to be told beyond all of that as well. It surrounds the attacks on President Trump, a man who may just be the most resilient, driven man I have ever known. I'm not worried about President Trump. See, Donald J. Trump will handle his business and return to the White House. I have no doubt about that. You know who I am worried about? I'm specifically worried about two men, Trump loyalists. They are not just employees of President Trump, but they are two men who owe President Trump a debt of gratitude for rescuing them from life's constant battles. I'm talking about President Trump's co-defendants in this ridiculous classified documents case, the boxes hoax, as I call it. It's actually fake news to even describe Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira as co-defendants. See, I actually believe these two men, what they really are crime victims. Crime victims of a weaponized justice system run by goons like Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Chris Wray, by the way. Those two are the ones who should be charged with hostage taking because Nauta and de Oliveira are government hostages now. Innocent bystanders caught up in a high-stakes coup attempt, another one, to take out the former president and soon to be the next president of the United States. And the media is making it seem like Nauta and de Oliveira are some kind of criminal masterminds, helping President Trump destroy evidence. Give me a break. Here's MSNBC running with that narrative.
The superseding indictment describes Walt Nauta as every bit as guilty as Richard Nixon's criminal White House chief of staff, Bob Haldeman, who went to prison for his crimes committed in that Republican White House for that Republican president. Walt Nauta is described in this indictment as an eager, proactive, on-the-ground manager of the conspiracy.
Oh, my Lord. Do you see the lies they push? Do you know who Walt Nauta is? Nauta is a Navy man, President Trump's former personal valet from the White House. And I actually believe the deep state Pentagon insiders didn't like Nauta getting too close to the president. So they tried to have him removed from his White House duties and sent back out to sea on a Navy ship. One of President Trump's advisors stepped in and instead gave Nauta a job as the president's personal assistant at Mar-a-Lago. Nauta is now accused of moving boxes around. That's right, boxes. For that, he faces decades in prison. And MSNBC had disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok on to break it all down.
Walt Nauta was at one point scheduled to travel with the president. He canceled that without telling anybody and made plans to travel instead down to Mar-a-Lago. And he starts engaging in communications and back and forth with De Oliveira, including a weekend, or I think it was actually a Monday meeting after a lot of back and forth, where Nauta parks at an adjacent property. He doesn't even go on to Mar-a-Lago. And De Oliveira comes out, goes through some bushes to meet with him, goes back in, and then goes back out a second time to meet with Nauta. Now, what were they talking about? The indictment doesn't specify.
Oh, but they were climbing around in bushes. The indictment doesn't specify. But they're crawling through bushes, hiding something. Come on. So yes, Biden's radical DOJ henchmen are literally willing to destroy a Navy veteran, personally and financially, all in their fanatical and deranged effort to destroy President Trump. The same goes for Carlos de Oliveira, a Portuguese immigrant who worked his way up from doing odd jobs at Mar-a-Lago to the property director of one of the finest, most prestigious clubs in America. In 2010, President Trump saw something in a young immigrant handyman, nurtured his talents, then unleashed his potential. Like Nauta, Carlos faces decades in prison too, simply for allegedly delivering a message to delete surveillance footage, a message President Trump insists was never issued, footage he swears was never deleted. The entire claim is, as the president calls it, prosecutorial fiction and misconduct. Trump attorney Alina Habba put it best when asked about this ridiculous theory that President Trump used these two men to try and obstruct justice, but failed in doing so.
The question is, was there an attempt to try to make sure that didn't happen?
Well, let's be clear. If there was an attempt by somebody who lives in a home, take out President Trump, who owns a company, he owns it, he owns the IT, he pays for all these employees. If there was an attempt for him to not turn over documents or he wanted something deleted, do you not think that that's something he couldn't have gotten done? Let's just use common sense.
So the story here is that our government, a government that's supposed to be by and for the people, is willing to destroy the little guy in its quest for ultimate power. Nauta and De Oliveira are working class men, pawns being threatened and intimidated by those in positions we are supposed to trust. This special prosecutor, Jack Smith, on the hunt for President Trump, is a partisan man. He's a hitman. The swamp, the deep state, all of it rolled into a deceitful sewer dweller. That's what Jack Smith is.
Now, this deranged lunatic named Jack Smith, who's been overturned unanimously by the Supreme Court, he's tried to destroy many lives. You ever see the picture of the guy? It's like central casting. Deranged Jack Smith and the DOJ will probably bring another case along with the DA. We have a racist DA in crime-ridden Atlanta. Atlanta, these people are sick, and they are really the deranged. And this guy's the most deranged of all.
So instead of focusing on the innocent, on the law-abiding, wouldn't it be nice if federal investigators turned their sights on the man who is the real risk to America? Joe Biden, of course. Well, joining me now, former physician to President Trump and Barack Obama, retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral and current congressman from my home state of Texas, Congressman Ronnie Jackson is with us. Doc, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming on today.
Good to see you too, Grant. Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I'm at the rodeo grounds here in Hereford, Texas, so apologize for the background. It's the best I can do tonight, but I'm just happy to be with you.
Let me tell you something. That's what it's all about. I love when the members of Congress get to go back to their home district. You're in Texas. You ought to be at the rodeo on a beautiful, albeit hot night in Texas. I'm hot under the collar, though, Congressman. What can Congress do to rein in this fanatical Jack Smith?
Well, I'm going to start off by telling you, Grant, I know Walt and Carlos personally. I've known both of them for a long time. They're both really, really good men. I've known Walt for years and years, and he is this man has given his entire life to service to this country, the United States Navy. You will not meet a more humble, genuine person than Walt. And I was disgusted and furious when I saw what they were doing to him. And this is all in an effort to try to get him to turn on President Trump somehow and say something that they want him to say. And it's disgusting that the DOJ and the FBI can go to these lengths to do this to President Trump. But we know there's no limit at what they'll do. I mean, we can see the double standard that's out here right now. We have the DOJ and the FBI devoting all of their time and energy into bringing President Trump down for anything they can come up with, stuff that they would never charge anybody else with, and they're coming after him with. The same people, the same individuals in the DOJ and the FBI are spending all their time covering up the Biden crime family and all the misdeeds that are going on there. I mean, I think that President Biden has sold this country out to Russia, to Ukraine, to China, and God knows what he's got us into. I would suspect that a large part of what's going on in Ukraine right now is directly tied to the undue influence that they have over the Biden family. But those are things we need the answer to. We've got to get in there, like you said, and I saw him talking today about defunding Jack Smith and his entire organization. I want to do that. I'd love to do that. This man is just a part of he's a major part of the problem with what's going on in our country right now. He's just a poster child for how our country's screwed up. So I will do everything I can as a member of Congress to put this to rest. But we are going to stand behind President Trump. I will stand behind him until my last breath. And we are going to also fight aggressively to come after the Biden crime family and figure out what's going on here, because it is important for our national security. Our country is compromised.
Yeah, it is amazing to me that we're looking at all these indictments on President Trump, and you've got $5 million payments to Hunter, $5 million payments to Joe. You've got Russian oligarchs coming in and dining with Joe Biden. They don't go on a sanction list when he's vice president. All of these things. You got the Burisma case, the Ukraine ties. And President Trump's the one who's indicted, not to mention defrauding the United States. What about Hillary Clinton and the Russian collusion hoax? Well, she wasn't charged with defrauding the United States.
No, I mean, and they obviously have a distinct advantage. You know, if you're covered, if you have top cover, if you're in power and you control the FBI and the DOJ, and you control social media and the mainstream media and the liberal press, and most of the American people don't even hear about anything that you don't want them to hear about, and they get exaggerated versions of anything you want, and they use those resources to weaponize and come after their political opponents like they're doing with President Trump. It's hard to fight back against that. But you know what? There's one person that can do this. Only one person that I've ever met that can weather this storm, will weather this storm, will come back, and that's President Trump. President Trump's going to come back. He's going to be the president of the United States again. And when he comes back, I cannot wait to get in the fight with him again and hold some of these people responsible, because I could not be more furious with what's going on in this country right now. I'm scared. I am scared for the future of my kids and my grandkids right now. And I don't care if you're on the right or the left. You should be terrified about what's going on in this country right now.
Well, Congressman Ronnie Jackson, you can count me in on that fight. I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you and President Trump and every other patriot that wants this country back. And that's what it's about. Where do you stand, Congressman, on the idea of impeaching President Trump? On impeaching Joe Biden. Where do you stand on that issue? Because many say, hey, we should be going after Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray first before we impeach Joe Biden. How do you see that playing out?
We don't have time anymore. I mean, they all need to be impeached, but we don't have time anymore. We have to go after President Biden. We have to go after him aggressively. We have more than enough information right now to start impeachment proceedings on him. You know, I know the bar is going to be a lot higher for him because we got to go over to the Senate. The Senate has to convict him. We've got some real rhino Republicans even in the Senate that we're going to have to really have overwhelming information, overwhelming evidence in order to get them to do what needs to be done. But in my mind, we have more than enough right now to impeach this man. We need to be doing it right now. And our country doesn't have time to wait for step A and then step B before we get there. We have to do what needs to be done, and we have to do it right now.
Why is it that there are so many Republicans that don't think like you and I do when it comes to time on this, that time is of the essence, that they take this wait and see attitude, so many of them?
I'm telling you, I don't know. I think they've lived in and around the swamp way too long now, and they're just comfortable with with what's happening. But I just can't imagine that anyone can really look at what's happening and look their kids and their grandkids in the eyes and continue to postpone this or to push this off or to sidestep this. This is something that has to be addressed right now. We may never get another chance to get our country back. And certainly if we get Biden back in office for 4 more years or another Democrat in the White House for 4 years after this, I don't think we recover from this.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Congressman Ronnie Jackson, it's great having you on the program. I wouldn't expect you to be any place but a Texas rodeo when you're back home on a summer night in Texas. Buddy, I appreciate you coming on, as always.
Thank you, Grant. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Right back at you. All right, folks. Does this new Trump indictment by the DOJ have any legal standing at all? I've got 4 defenses of this. We talked about going on the offense yesterday, subpoenaing everybody involved in any state that had any election irregularities. We'll talk about all of this with Trump attorney Christina Bobb next. Welcome back, everyone. It is clear to me that if you are a conservative in Washington, D.C., there is no chance you can ever get a fair trial there. I want you to look at the judge who was involved in President Trump's case. This is Tanya Chutkin. She is an Obama appointee from 2014. She used to work for a law firm called Boies, Schiller, and Flexner. This law firm has deep ties to the Democrat Party. In fact, Hunter Biden used to work for this law firm back in the day. You know who was one of their clients? Burisma from Ukraine. Okay, so this is what you should learn here as who this woman is that's supposed to be giving President Trump a fair trial. You look at her liberal actions. All right, I went back and looked at some of her record. She wanted to give illegal aliens unfettered access to abortion nationwide. She stopped President Trump's reinstatement of the federal death penalty. And you know how she did it? She used some obscure tie to the Food and Drug Administration. But she wanted to stop that at all cost. She ordered Texas to transport a 17-year-old to a Texas abortion facility while this 17-year-old girl was 16 weeks pregnant. 16 weeks, past the first trimester. Ordered her to have Texas pay for this abortion for her and get her an abortion. Then you look at the contempt for January 6thers. She has sentenced 31 defendants, all of them. She's sentenced to prison time. 9 of them, of these January 6 defendants, she increased the sentencing from what even these radical prosecutors wanted. This is how she stated what was going on January 6th. This is a direct quote, paper cut 8. It has to be made clear that trying to violently overthrow the government, trying to stop the peaceful transition of power and assaulting law enforcement officers in that effort is going to be met with absolute certain punishment. During one of the January 6th defendants' sentencing, Chutkan appeared to preemptively insinuate that Trump's culpability, saying that the protesters were, and this is paper cut 10, did not go to the United States Capitol out of any love for our country. He went for one man, of course, that being President Trump. Now, we all know that's bogus. How is President Trump supposed to get a fair trial through all of this? Then you add in what she called January 6th, a violent attempt to overthrow the government that almost succeeded, when she describes the Black Lives Matter protests as, you ready for this, quote, mostly peaceful. And when you think about the Black Lives Matter protests, they were nothing but peaceful. 1 cop killed, 2,037 officers injured, 400 cars damaged, 6 to 20 people killed in the riots, 624 reported cases of arson, 2,385 cases of looting, and there were over 16,000 arrests. That's her mostly peaceful riots, and she talks about January 6th as being violent. So how do you get a fair trial if you're a conservative? How does President Trump get a fair trial? It's almost impossible. So I believe the main allegations in this case comes down to this. They want you to believe that President Trump knew his claims were false. The line in here is knowingly false. Now, I can tell you, I've met with President Trump. I sat and had dinner with President Trump shortly after this. I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, there is no way in hell this man thought the claims were false. He believed them. He talks about them all the time. To this day, I still think that he believes, like me, that many of these claims have yet to be proven false. And so that's a tall order. There are other defenses in all of this as well. Joining me now is Trump attorney and author of the book, Stealing Your Vote. Christina Bobb is back with us. Christina, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Christina, there is so much to unpack here because the deck is so stacked against not just President Trump, but any conservative that where cases are brought out of this district. How do you handle this?
Yeah, well, you raised some really good concerns and really good points about potential problems with the venue. But I've got to be honest, the way that this indictment is pled, I think is so porous, and there are so many problems with it. You mentioned many in your monologue, that notwithstanding the problems of the venue, I still like President Trump's odds in this. I think he's going to prevail on this issue. There's many defenses, as you mentioned, whether it's First Amendment, they're trying to criminalize political speech, and they're trying to criminalize political opposition and dissent. And then to your point, which I think is fantastic, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he believed the election was fair. And I don't think there's a person in this country who believes beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump thought this was a fair election. So they have quite an uphill battle, notwithstanding the advantages that they have from the venue.
Christina, last night on this program, I called this the greatest indictment to ever come down against President Trump. And I call it that for this reason. This is basically a disinformation indictment. I mean, it's all, President Trump said this, did that. It's a First Amendment speech. But Jack Smith raises voting irregularities in Michigan. He talks about what happened in Nevada. He raises the issues in Georgia that to me have never still been proven false, any of these allegations. He talks about Detroit, Michigan. You can now go on the offensive. You can make a witness list and subpoena every single executive, every single Secretary of State, every single election worker, every single person that signed an affidavit. You can now start hauling all of these people into court. You can now try to prove the case that the election actually was stolen. Thank you, Jack Smith.
Yeah, he finally gave us the venue that no other federal court was willing to give us and gave us national subpoena power. So thank you. But also, just to add to your point, not only does he raise all of these different issues with the state, but he doesn't even limit it to President Trump's time in office between November 3rd and January 6th. He raises issues about the Arizona audit and the Michigan investigation from the Michigan Senate, which all came later in 2021 and beyond. He goes into a lot of the investigations that took place well after President Trump had left office, which means the whole thing is open. And Grant, I know you've done a great job covering this on your show. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of investigations, particularly in Wisconsin and Georgia and Arizona and Pennsylvania, that have all come to light well after President Trump left office. And because he put that in the indictment, all of that becomes fair game now.
Yeah. You know, just the news, my friend John Solomon released this Bernie Kerik memo. Bernie Kerik, the former police commissioner in New York, working with Rudy Giuliani at the time. A memo that came out, I think, January 5th, saying, hey, there's more information to come. This is to the Trump team. We've got Peter Navarro working on things. There are all these affidavits. The memo spells out all these questions, which that would prove that the Trump team really was still at that point questioning this election, which takes out that he somehow knowingly knew these allegations were false.
Right. I don't think there's a way for them to not just prove that President Trump thought the allegations were false. He didn't. He honestly believed then and to this day believes, as do I, that a lot of these allegations are true. And I'm not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the election was fair. Quite the contrary. I actually think the election, like Donald Trump, I believe it was rigged and stolen. And so for Jack Smith to plead this indictment the way that he did, he has the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the 2020 election was free and fair of fraud to the level that it didn't change the outcome of the election. And I think there's a lot of people in this country who will say, whether they think that it did change the outcome or not, there's reasonable doubt as to whether it did. So I do not see how they can overcome the burden that they created for themselves in the way that they drafted this.
Just on the number of affidavits alone signed by everyday people who claim to have witnessed fraud, all you need to do is raise one reasonable allegation of fraud that would give, that's all you need to prove. You could prove that in every state with these affidavits. You could prove it with the mail-in ballot scheme. I have on video people showing me 5, 6, 7 ballots mailed to their house. That alone should tell you that something was wrong with this, Christina.
Absolutely. And you look at, Wayne County, Michigan, Detroit, where the canvassers were refusing to certify the canvass in Wayne County because the numbers don't match. And the same thing for several counties around the country. The numbers just didn't match from the precinct. When you add up all the precincts, the counties are supposed to certify that the precincts, they match the poll books. And these Republican canvassers were saying, they don't match. We're not going to certify. And then they were threatened, and there was, back and forth. And finally, Jocelyn Benson just said, forget it. We'll skip the canvass, and just went forward without it. But the numbers have never reconciled. And then you've got the trucks coming in, dropping off additional ballots. There's no doubt in my mind that not only is President Trump innocent, but I think the nation's actually going to get to finally see the truth about what happened in 2020.
Yeah, all thanks to Jack Smith. I don't know how dumb he could have been to offer this up, but exactly. Lastly, I love the idea of going on offense, and I like to talk about offense even better because you turn your opponent's weakness into a positive for you. But there are some defenses in this. Presidential immunity is one. A difference of legal opinion, this idea of the electors and trying to tell Vice President Pence, hey, send it back to this is just a difference of legal opinion. That's all that is.
Right.
And then, of course, you have protected free speech.
Yeah, and advice of counsel. Even if the legal opinion wasn't valid, although I believe that it was, to your point, he can say, I'm not a lawyer. I'm listening to my attorneys, and I'm relying on advice of counsel. I mean, that's an affirmative defense, and he has that here, and his attorneys aren't even disputing that. So I just don't see a path to victory for Jack Smith in this, but I definitely see a path to victory for Donald Trump. I think this is just going to propel him right back into the White House.
That was my last question to you. We say it every time one of these indictments comes down that I really do believe it makes this man even stronger and the momentum behind him even greater. I would take it you agree with me on that.
100%. It saddens me that they're putting our nation through this, and I'm sad for everybody involved whose families and personal lives are being dragged through the mud on this. But at the end of the day, it's just going to expose the corruption in this country, give us an opportunity to clean it out, and I believe our nation will be stronger and better on the other side of this. But we've got to get through it, and we get through it together as a nation. Everybody getting involved, help clean up your local precincts. and America will prevail in the end.
Amen to that one. Christina Bobb, as always, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight and helping us break this down.
Thank you.
All right, absolutely. Thank you. All right, folks. The Mexican drug cartels, this is a Biden problem. He's basically opened up the border for them, all right? They're getting more and more visible at our southern border, trying to intimidate anyone who stands in the way of their human trafficking business. You know who they're trying to intimidate? Real America's Voice employees. We'll talk to one of them next. It is no secret to all of you that our border is a complete disaster. It's beyond chaos now, okay? It has now descended into an abyss of just absolute disaster. We have more people coming across our border than ever before. They're disguising them using the CBP One app. They're basically making it legal for anybody who wants to come in here, including cartel members. I believe cartel members come and go as they please now. I believe they have operational control of the border. And if anybody gets in their way, what do? They try to intimidate them, and I'm actually worried they'll actually try to kill them. We've got correspondents that have been working the border. You know, Ben Berkwam has been working the border for a long time, trying to bring you the information. Anthony Aguero, Oscar Ramirez has been another. All of them, I believe, are in harm's way, and I believe the cartels pose a great threat to them. Well, apparently, our man Anthony Aguero, border correspondent for America, Real America's Voice, was threatened by the cartels. Anthony, I want to welcome you to the program. Why don't you take me through this story and tell me when it was, as you are live from Boca Chica, Texas.
That's right, Grant. Thank you for having me. We're here right a few miles away from SpaceX right now, where for months on end we had been receiving information from our Border Patrol friends that there was migrants coming in through this particular area. Michael Yan and a few others and Ann Vandersteel and myself are out here trying to shine a little bit of light on this. We have a team, a reconnaissance team, in which we have lasers and cameras so that we're able to pinpoint, track, and look far away in infrared technology. And last night, upon us getting to the actual Gulf, right at the tip where the water from the Rio Grande goes into the Gulf of Mexico, bordering the country of Mexico, the water level is ridiculously low, as you can see on here. And while we were out there, arriving out there were two very suspicious vehicles on the other side, on the Mexican side, in which, upon our arrival, we were all lights off. They began flashing their lights Morse code style at us. We did not respond. I immediately jumped out of the truck and I started recording because I didn't want them to move and me have missed the shot out there. Sure enough, a few seconds after I start recording, they start getting in their vehicles and they shimmy on out of there. At that point, I turn around and I tell the group that we're with, I tell them they are going to call their American counterparts to come over here and check us out. Grant, we've been working this border for several years on end. These people are fairly predictable. We kind of know how they operate. A few minutes after I turn around to the group that was with me to tell them that, lo and behold, here comes a vehicle, a white truck, pulls up right next to us, shining its light at us. The guy gets off of his vehicle like if he's looking at his tires, jumps back, and takes off. When we arrived back to the location where we were staying the night at, this individual was driving in our area extremely slow, creeping up behind us. We went back out there for a second time to see if the status had changed out there because the operation out there went stagnant. These people basically left the time that we were out there. So we went back a second time, and when we went back a second time, coming back to the place where we were staying at, the truck was parked right there, right in front of us. And these are definitely just intimidation tactics from these people. This is not the first time that our network, while boots on the ground, encounters situations like this, but they're just getting so much more brazen now. There is a Border Patrol checkpoint maybe about 1.5 miles before you get to the SpaceX location because there has been so much foot traffic coming through here. As you can see right behind me, these shrubs right on the riverbank on the Mexican side are completely obliterated from where people just come through and knock these things right over. Otherwise, they'd be flourished and real happy plants, and that's not the case. They're all beat up everywhere where people are just coming in and stepping all over the place. It's a mess, Grant.
Anthony, are you in fear that they're following you now on the American side? Certainly they have counterparts on the American side of the river. Are you worried about them following you? Are you worried about them doing? Because in many respects, your cameras pose more a threat to them than Border Patrol right now, who's basically nowhere to be found thanks to the Biden administration.
They're basically non-existent out here, Grant. We were out there for hours on end, and we only saw one Border Patrol agent out of all of the hours that we were out there. It's just miles on end, completely unprotected. And yeah, it's something to think about when we're out here trying to go home at the end of this, and it's something that just makes you think a little bit. But we're definitely on top of it. We're being very precautious, and we're hoping for the best out here to continue to bring you guys the best noise available.
Do me a favor. What I tell all of you gentlemen down there trying to bring us the story from the border and doing such a great job of it, just stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and keep your head low. God forbid you need to. Anthony Aguero, thank you so much, my friend. Stay safe.
You too, Grant. Thank you. Take care, sir.
Absolutely. So, you folks, you see what's going on. You got the cartels now more concerned about Real America's Voice down there because the other mainstream media outlets are gone. They're MIA. We've got cameras down there on the border. You could see Anthony had shot that video. And now they're trying to intimidate them to stay away. So the border's open. It has effect. Every town is a border town now, including New York, thanks to Governor Greg Abbott, who continues to send illegals up there by the busloads. New York City Mayor Eric Adams had this to say about the border.
Eventually, this was going to come to a neighborhood near you. Having someone embedded is a good start. That came from the Secretary of Homeland Security. We want to thank him. But I've been very clear on what we need. We need to control the border. We need to call a state of emergency, and we need to properly fund this national crisis.
So instead of attacking Republicans, as Eric Adams really likes to do, he ought to be attacking the leadership in Washington, or lack of it. I'm talking about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all of their henchmen running this government now. Kamala Harris loves to criticize the GOP. She's completely oblivious, or is she, to what's going on the border. She hasn't been there, so I don't know how she'd know exactly what's going on. This is Kamala Harris, cut 4.
Let's agree that people should not be the pawns in a political game. Human beings should not be treated as pawns in a political game. What is happening in terms of sending these migrants, most of whom have fled great harm, and sending them across the country for the sake of some political showmanship, it's just irresponsible. If you want to deal with the problem, then do it, if you are a leader, by participating in the solution.
Well, the state of Texas, where we broadcast from here, is dealing with the problem. Greg Abbott is actually taking into custody many of these illegals, sending them back over the border. It is a Texas plan. We're doing what the federal government would not do. She talks about it's a problem. It's a problem because of the Biden administration. There's no doubt in my mind about that as Kamala Harris spews more and more lies related to this issue. All right, folks, one thing that I take very seriously is my health. I try to eat right. My schedule, it's not always easy. I know I need fruits and vegetables, like 6 cups a day, but that's nearly impossible for almost anyone. So according to anyone who has common sense, people who eat healthy live longer. They have less heart disease, diabetes, and have less cancer, all right? Just look at your loved ones who are in shape and are eating right. I use Field of Greens, and I'll tell you why. Unlike other fruits and vegetable supplements, each specific fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens is medically selected to support specific functions like heart health, liver and kidney health, immune system, and metabolism. Field of Greens works fast, and if you're like me, you'll feel healthier, have more energy, your skin and hair will look healthier, and it can help you lose weight. But the biggest benefit is the better health promise. Take Field of Greens, and at your next doctor visit, if they say something like, man, you're looking great, keep it up, well, return Field of Greens for a full refund. So to help you get started, I got you 15% off your first order, plus get another 10% off when you subscribe for reoccurring orders. Visit fieldofgreens.com. Use the promo code GRANT. That's fieldofgreens.com, promo code GRANT for that great discount. All right, Google is continuing their censorship campaign against Christians and conservatives. We have 2 websites now that we can prove have been, well, all out censored by Google. We'll talk to the leaders of one of those websites next. Folks, I'm going to give you some of my favorite websites. Of course, there's GrantStinchfield.com, but where I go to in the morning to look for things. There's WND, which is great. I go to Breitbart. I go to the Gateway Pundit. Sometimes I go to the Blaze. Of course, Real America's Voice. All of these are very important websites. If you go to Google and you put in Trump indictment, and there are important conservative stories about this, none of these sites will come up. You have to look very, very hard in order to find articles from those sites. This is the UN Department of Global Communications talking about their partnership with Google and censorship.
You know, we partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. You know, we own the science, and we think that the world, you know, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do.
You don't own the science, and anything coming out of the United Nations should be thrown straight in the trash. She just admitted that they collude with Google to make sure you get search results they want you to get. I guess it's their company, that's fine, except don't try to portray yourself as being unbiased when you're not. So then in my daily search, I'm reading a WND article, okay? And it reads like this, paper cut one, let's put it up on the screen. We can report today that at least 2 important news sites have been notified that they were permanently demonetized by Google. WND, the first independent online journalism organization founded in 1997 as conservative Christian property, and Gateway Pundit, a popular conservative news site. This week, WND observes a second year without Google ads, which is pretty much decimates our website's advertising revenue. So with that, I want to bring in now the co-founder and CMO of WND, Elizabeth Farah, is with us. Elizabeth, great to have you back on the show.
Hey, great to see you, Grant. And you look marvelous. I'm sure it's from your supplements.
Thank you. Exactly. Feel the greens, baby. Feel the greens. And you look great, too, Elizabeth. Let me ask you, you get news of this, that again being demonetized. How do you get that news? What happens? How do you find all this out?
Oh, they send the most ridiculous. We've had meetings. This is the 2nd year anniversary. We've had meetings on this before as we're reading out the charges from our judge, Google. And we're dangerous. They're scared of WND. And the 3 main storylines that they finally hit us with, because they had set up this, I guess, this structure within Google that these are 3 no-nos to talk about that. It is transgenderism and, you know, everything that comes with that. And we have an objection, transgenderism and what they're doing with children. They objected to that. Additionally, they objected to us reporting on the science of COVID and reporting on stories that peer-reviewed journals were putting out. And the other is, of course, questioning that it was the most fair and free election in the history of the United States.
So these are the three big
these little
issues.
notifications, and they don't, you respond to them, and then it's a predetermined outcome.
Go figure. These are the three very important issues that infringed upon our freedoms as conservatives. So every conservative site's going to be talking about this. So it doesn't surprise me that the most outspoken and direct and bold sites, WND and the Gateway Pundit, they're good friends of mine too, are at the top of the list for being demonetized. Now, what does this mean for your outlet, WND.com?
Oh, it's devastating. It's hard to believe that we are still surviving. They started this collusion during the Obama administration against WND very specifically. We were the first sort of the trailblazer of independent conservative news. And so they went after us first. And during the Obama administration, we were very vocal. So this started in 2014 with censorship and destroying the search results that had given us so much traffic and had built our readership. When you've been disappeared like that, your traffic has nothing. It cannot do anything but decrease. But then the final nail in the coffin, if you will, because we're not dead yet, is 2 years ago, they permanently banned us, demonetized us, and no one is able to use Google AdSense, which has probably 90% of all advertising in the world, is able to advertise on WND. And so it's devastated because we were just a for-profit business. And of course, what would happen to real America's voice if you had no advertising revenue? Yeah. That's how news is done.
Look, it's when you're in the media business, advertising is everything. Being able to sell the eyeballs is everything. And don't think they don't know this. They know that they're trying to cut us off at the knees on all of this. The deplatforming is real. You see it on cable outlets with other conservative networks being knocked off cable outlets for their conservative viewpoints. So what do you do, Elizabeth? Lastly, what can people do to help WND and stay afloat?
Firstly, they can go to WND.com/help. And there are various ways to help there. Obviously, financially is the most important way to help right now. Your prayers are very much asked for. And I believe that we all have to fight Google. I don't believe this is a matter of the free market. Google is a international utility. And it's as if one company owns every road, the phones, electricity to a business, and they have the ability, without interference, to cut that off from any business they choose. And that's what's happened to WND.
They have huge power, Google does. Well, I appreciate you telling this story, Elizabeth, for I urge everyone to go to WND.com and pay them a visit. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. Hey, folks, you're welcome. All right, folks, you should choose an air purifier, all right? Do it. Choose it like your life depends on it, because it just might. Canadian wildfire smoke has blanketed the U.S., reaching as far as states, our southern states, and with wildfire season in full swing nationwide, toxic smoke is threatening our health. EnviroCleanse is a military-grade air purification system that's now available for your home. EnviroCleanse is specifically designed to wipe out airborne chemicals and viruses known to cause illness, allergies, and difficulty breathing. Even toxic gases and particles found in wildfire smoke are no match for EnviroCleanse. This is how you keep your family healthy, and this is why the Department of Defense chose EnviroCleanse to protect the air on board our Navy ships. And only EnviroCleanse comes with free professional air quality monitors, so you know your family's breathing purified air or your money back. Visit ekpure.com. Use code word NEWS for 10% off your EnviroCleanse air purification unit. You'll also receive free air quality monitor plus a fast free shipping on the unit. That's $150 savings. Visit ekpure.com, code word NEWS. That's ekpure.com, code word NEWS. Coming up after the break, Congressman Eric Swalwell heckled over his relationship with Chinese spy Fang Fang.
Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. As he predicted, former President Donald Trump got hit with another indictment yesterday. This one focused on the January 6 Capitol riots. Most conservative legal experts say it's pretty thin gruel, but not Mike Pence, who is trying to beat his former boss, but losing horribly. He said Trump should never be president again. Don't look at your stocks today, because another credit agency downgraded the Biden economy, and Wall Street is set to plunge. After taking a victory lap for having a good month at the border in June, President Biden's border team had to admit that illegal crossings were up again last month. And Taylor Swift has raised the bar for generosity. Word is that she handed out $100,000 bonuses to the truck drivers on her latest tour, and even more to others who helped in her success. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
It's government-mandated pregnancies. Government-mandated pregnancies. We are against government-mandated pregnancies. Overwhelmingly, Americans want women to be able to do and make these decisions for themselves.
Hey, Congressman Swalwell, what about Fang Fang? Fang Fang. That's what the guy's yelling from the back. What about Fang Fang? Is government mandated? Oh, how embarrassing to be a sitting United States congressman who slept with a Chinese spy. That man's a disgrace, too. It's going to do it for us today, folks. I'm Grant Stinchfield. Don't forget to check out my website, GrantStinchfield.com. How about whiny Will Hurd? We get into him in the podcast. Go check that out. Stinchfield's Army rolls. See you back here tomorrow.
Live from Studio 6B, 8 p.m. on the East Coast. Real